Welcome, my child, to my rebuilding of the architecture of love. Foundation 23. Longing. Narrated from the book, Jesus' Return, Rebuilding the Architecture of Love. Date, the 2nd of February, 2026. Video 8. Title, The Human Love Story. Feeling deep longing? Then lift your ache toward heaven, not to be denied, but to be embraced. Jesus speaks. Let us continue. Now you understand longing, its movement, its purpose, and how it lives within you. My children, as humans you carry wishes, hopes, and desires. You carry a longing to do good and to see your efforts bear fruit. This ache within you is not weakness. It is the soul reaching toward what is possible, even when obstacles rise and the path feels closed. Let me show you what true longing looks like in the real world. In the morning after I was placed in the tomb, when love refused to give up, the longing of my beloved Mary Magdalene stood outside the tomb. She watched every edge of the stone, hoping to see something stir. She hoped that life might appear at any moment. She wept. Her tears soaked the ground beneath her feet. The air around her was silent, so silent that not even a single bird was singing. Now, I will let Mary Magdalene tell you her side of the story, moment by moment, in her own words. And you will see that this same longing has appeared before, in other hearts, in other places, across time.
I am Mary Magdalene, and this is my story. The story of the morning, when love seemed buried and yet rose again. I walked to the tomb alone, not because I was brave, but because I could not stay still. The others hid behind locked doors, their fear thick as smoke in a shuttered room. But fear was not what held me. I was hollow, restless, emptied. Grief is its own tyrant. And it drove me forward, until my feet obeyed the ache, my heart could no longer silence. The streets were empty, the stones damp with night, and shadows stretched thin across the alleys. A stray dog nosed through scraps near a closed shop, uninterested in the woman walking with haunted steps. The city slept, but I was awake, and to be awake meant remembering. I held a jar of spices tight against my ribs, as if its cool weight could steady the tremor inside me. The jar was heavy, yet not nearly as heavy as the reason I carried it. It was all I had left to give him. Love reduced to oil and cloth, tenderness disguised as ritual. My hands shook as I walked, not from the weight, but from the futility of offering comfort to a body that could no longer feel it. I tried to anchor my mind to small things. The rhythm of my sandals on stone, the whisper of fabric at my ankles, the rise and fall of my breath. But even these betrayed me, pulling me back to him, to the voice that made correction sound like kindness, to the eyes that saw every ruined corner of me and did not turn away, to the laugh that was low and certain, as if joy itself belonged to him and he shared it freely. I remembered how he spoke my name. Mary. Not with impatience, not the way the world had always said it, with suspicion and judgment, as though I were a burden to be managed. He spoke it like music, as if my name were something beautiful, something worth repeating, something worth holding. That memory alone dragged me out of bed and into the silent streets. That memory warmed my hands around the jar of spices. That memory carried me forward long after weariness told me to stop. The path curved toward the garden, olive trees leaning over me, their leaves silvered by the fragile light before dawn. My breath quickened, and my chest tightened. It felt as though the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see how much more one heart could bear. I thought I was going there to weep beside a tomb. I thought I was walking into the final chapter of a story already closed. I was wrong. The garden was colder than I expected, and the air clung to me as if it too had been awake all night. As I neared the tomb, my legs slowed of their own accord, because something in the atmosphere had shifted. The very silence leaned forward, listening. Then I saw it. The stone was rolled back. The tomb yawned open. A wound in the hillside that should have remained sealed. The jar of spices slipped from my arms and shattered against the ground with a sharp crack that tore through the quiet. Perfume burst upward in a sudden living cloud. Sweet and fierce and heartbreakingly beautiful, too alive for death and too fragrant for grief. I hated it for daring to bloom while my soul was breaking. I bent down and looked inside. Cold shadows. Linen folded quietly, left behind with intention. But nobody. No beloved face. The place where I expected to fall and weep was empty. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I stumbled back into the garden, tears blurring everything. I wanted to scream his name into the sky, but the sound strangled itself before it could leave me. The world had taken him once, and now it had stolen even the dignity of mourning. Then I saw him, a man standing among the trees, his silhouette softened by the gray, trembling light of dawn. He looked like a gardener, someone who belonged to the soil, whose hands shaped life from the earth. My grief reached toward him like a drowning hand breaking the surface. I cried out, begging him to tell me where he was, promising I would bring him back myself. He stepped closer. Only one step, yet it is close to a distance far wider than the space between us. Then he spoke. Not a sermon, not a correction, not even comfort. Only my name, Mary. The sound split the morning, opened the way sunrise splits the horizon. My knees buckled. It was my name but spoken, as though I had never in all my life heard it properly. As though every previous time had been an echo, and this was the origin. His voice carried me back to myself, back to him, back to everything I thought I had lost. The morning rearranged itself. The garden filled with breath again. And suddenly my name was no longer mine alone. It belonged to him, and in his mouth it became holy. I ran to him without reasoning, and without restraint, only love. My arms found his cloak, and beneath it, warmth, breath, and strength. Not memory, not hope. Him, alive. My sobs poured into his chest as I kept saying that he was here. As if naming the miracle might undo the days of horror. And he laughed, not the laugh of mockery, but the deep, certain laugh of someone who has walked through death and returned carrying joy in his hands. It was quiet and steady, like water slipping over stone. I clung to him with everything in me, as if my grasp alone could keep him anchored to the world forever. But he lifted his hand and placed it gently over my heart. The warmth radiated through me, not burning, but igniting. He told me that he stayed here, not beside me only, but within me. His hand rested like a seal pressed into wax, a vow without words, yet unbreakable. He would never leave me. The people asked me again and again what happened that morning. How could I answer? How do you explain being found when you were certain you were lost? How do you put resurrection into language made for ordinary things? I tried. I told them about the garden, about the cold air clinging to my skin, about the stone rolled back like a page turning itself. I told them about the emptiness inside the tomb, and the voice in the garden that called my name like a secret returned to its owner. They nodded. They frowned. They argued. Some believed. Some doubted. But their questions could not touch what I knew and what I felt in the marrow of my bones. Love is stronger than death. Love is stronger than despair. Love is stronger than the silence of a sealed tomb. That knowledge never left me. Not when days stretched long and weary. Not when nights crowded me with shadows. Not when sorrow returned again, knocking at my door with familiar hands. I carried that morning like a fire sewn beneath my skin. It was not a memory. It was a pulse. Years later, walking through the markets, with dust rising in sunlit spirals, I would suddenly catch the scent of the garden. Damp earth, crushed lilies, and the soft bitterness of olives in the early air. For a moment I was back there, kneeling in the half-light. His hand warms over my heart, his vow burning like an ember that never cools. At night, when silence grew heavy enough to bruise, I would press my palm to the place he had touched me. My own heartbeat would meet me there. Steady, insistent, alive. And always, I could feel it. The seal, the promise, the presence. He had not stayed in the way I begged him to. He stayed in a way far deeper, far closer, and far more intimate than my arms could have ever held. He stayed within. That morning remade me. I went to the tomb expecting absence and grief, expecting to pour out love onto a body that could no longer answer. Instead, I heard my name spoken as if it was for the very first time. And in that moment, the world drew a new breath. So when people now ask me who I am, I do not begin with my birthplace, or my family, or the failures that once clung to me like chains. I begin here. I am Mary Magdalene. And in the morning, in the garden, I learned that longing does not end in the grave. Love calls your name. And when it does, everything becomes new. I am Mary Magdalene, and this is my story.
Jesus continues, "Now, my children, let us walk a little farther. For longing does not live only in Scripture. It breathes in every corner of the human story. You have seen Mary's longing in the garden, the ache that called her by name and opened eternity before her. Now hear another longing, born not in Jerusalem, but in distant lands. The longing of a king for his beloved. For the human heart, too, knows the power of desire that refuses to die. The love that builds monuments out of grief. The ache that shapes nations and carries the memory of a single soul across centuries. Come and let me show you how even human longing speaks the language of heaven. The Shah Jahan story of Mumtaz Mahal. The love story of the century. And now I will let Shah Jahan tell you his side of the story. Moment by moment, in his own words.
I am Shah Jahan, Emperor of the Mughal world, and this is my story. History remembers me by many names. Ruler, builder, warrior, lord of an empire carved in marble and gold. but long before any title rested upon my shoulders. I was simply a young man who had encountered a love that would define my life. Her name was Arjuman Banu Begum, but to me, she was Mumtaz Mahal, the chosen one of the palace, the woman for whom my heart learned its true language. I first saw her in the bustling market of Agra, a place alive with merchants calling prices, silks billowing like captured sunsets, and air thick with cardamom and rose. She was 15. I was 16. She moved past trays of pearls and bolts of shimmering fabric, and in that instant, when her dark eyes met mine, the world, with all its noise and color, fell silent. Love does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it enters quietly, as softly as silk sliding through the fingers. That was how she entered my life. Years passed before I could marry her. Duty, politics, and the machinery of empire stood between us. But longing is patient, and so was I. When the day finally came, when she walked into my palace as my bride, it was as though the very walls brightened, as if the marble itself recognized its future. Yes, I had other wives, for it was expected of an emperor. But no one touched the core of me as she did. She was not ornament or privilege. She was my companion in gardens, perfumed with jasmine, and my shadow on the battlefield, riding beside me through dust and danger. She followed me into tents lit by flickering lamps, into nights thick with uncertainty and war. Where I went, she went. Where I fought, she prayed. Where I faltered, she steadied me. Others bowed before me. Others feared me. Others praised me with rehearsed tongues. But she looked at me and saw only a man, flawed, striving, longing. Her honesty was a refuge. Her presence was a balm. Her voice could quiet storms in me that armies could not silence. For 19 years, we were never parted. Not for a season. Not for a campaign. Not for a single turning of the moon. In her presence, I was not an emperor surrounded by power. I was simply a man blessed beyond measure. A man who had found his second soul. But beauty, no matter how radiant, is fragile. And the world, no matter how gilded, is merciless. In the summer of 1631, in the heat of a military campaign, my beloved Mumtaz went into labor with our 14th child. Her cries rose through the canvas of the royal tent, cutting through the clatter of soldiers and the dust-laden wind. In that instant, before any physician could speak, before any servant dared approach, I knew a shadow had entered the room, and it had come for her. I rushed to her side, took her trembling hand in mine, and felt the strength leaving her breath by breath and heartbeat by fading heartbeat. Her eyes searched my face, not in fear, but in sorrow for the life we would not finish together. She was 38, too young to die, and too beloved to lose. And yet, in that dimly lit tent, surrounded by dust and soldiers, and the muted panic of an army holding its breath, she exhaled her last. The woman who had been my compass, my counsel, my joy, and my second soul slipped away like a whisper. In that moment, my world collapsed. I, Shah Jahan, Emperor of the Mughal throne, Lord over armies and master of cities and palaces, wept like a child. For 8 days, I neither ate nor bathed. I did not emerge from my chambers. Grief hollowed me from the inside out, as if someone had reached into my chest and taken the beating heart from it. By the time I finally walked into the light again, my hair had turned white in a single season, a crown of snow for a king who no longer wished to rule. They told me the empire needed me. Advisors spoke of wars, treaties, provinces, and revenue. But what is an empire to a man whose soul has been torn in two? Every garden seemed withered. Every song felt like an insult. The palace that once shimmered with color now felt like a mausoleum. At night, I pressed her shawl to my face, the fabric still carrying the faint scent of roses and sandalwood. And by dawn, it would be damp with the weight of my tears. My grief was not a storm that passed. It was an ocean, and I was drowning in it. But longing, when it is true, carries a power all its own. It does not resurrect the dead, yet it refuses to let love disappear into dust. I could not bring her back, but I could ensure the world would never forget her. I could take the love that tore me apart and carve it into eternity. So I made a vow, whispered in the darkness of my grief, spoken to the memory of the woman who had been my soul. Mumtaz Mahal will not fade. Her name will be written in stone, in light, and in sky, forever. On the banks of the Yamuna River, where the water moves like a quiet prayer, I commanded that a monument rise, not a tomb, but a testament, not a place of sorrow, but a palace for memory. Artisans came from every corner of the world. Persian calligraphers, Turkish stonecutters, Arab geometers, Indian masons who knew the secrets of marble. 20,000 hands, each guided by longing, labored beneath the sun. White marble came from Makrana, luminous as frozen moonlight. From distant lands came jade, jasper, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and carnelian. Stones once worn by kings were set into the walls as flowers that would never wilt. For 20 years, the work continued. Seasons turned. Empires shifted. My hair grew whiter, and my hands were more tired. But the monument rose slowly and steadily, as if longing itself were lifting it. Piece by shimmering piece. The dome curved upward, like the embracing vault of heaven. 4 minarets stood guard, slender and unwavering, sentinels assigned to protect her rest. For all time. Inside, every chamber was shaped not as death, but as paradise, with arches blooming like petals, light falling in soft cascades, and walls whispering with inlaid verse. This was the paradise I could not give her in life, so I built it for her in death. When it was finished, when the last stone was polished, and the final flower set into marble, I placed her at the center. There she rests still, beneath the great white dome that catches the sun at dawn and glows like a pearl at night. Sometimes, when the moon rises full and the river mirrors the palace in perfect symmetry, It seems as though the sky itself bows low to shelter her. And I think this: longing built this. Longing taught stone to breathe. Longing turned grief into wonder. In the final years of my life, when my beard had turned silver and my strength ebbed like a tired river, my own son placed me in chains. Power betrayed me, as power betrays all men in the end. But even betrayal could not sever me from the one treasure I had left. From my high stone window in Agra Fort, I looked across the Yamuna River. There stood her resting place, gleaming white against the horizon. Day after day, and night after night, I watched the Taj Mahal. It shimmered at dawn like a promise, glowed at dusk like a lantern of mercy, and silvered in moonlight as though heaven itself touched it with gentle fingers. People thought I survived out of stubbornness, or pride, or the faint hope of freedom. But the truth is simpler. Longing kept me alive. The curve of the dome, the quiet guardianship of the minarets, and the marble-catching stars became my breath, my pulse, and my final tether to this world. When my own breath finally gave out, when my body loosened its hold, and the world dimmed at the edges, they carried me to her. They laid me beside her, beneath the great dome I had raised in her honor. Husband and wife, two souls reunited in the silence of eternity. The world calls it a wonder, a masterpiece, a palace of marble and light. But to me, it is none of that. It is my love letter to Mumtaz, a vow carved in stone, a promise that even death could not undo our union. And now, even centuries later, when moonlight pours over its walls and travelers lift their eyes in wonder, I like to think they are not merely seeing a monument. They are seeing my heart, my grief, my devotion, my endless unbroken longing. If you listen closely, not with your ears, but with the quiet place inside your chest, you may hear what the stones still whisper. She was my joy. She was my heart. She was my forever. I am Shah Jahan, Emperor of the Mughal world, and this is my story.
Jesus continues, "Your longing, my child, is not a flaw of the heart. It is a window into my Father's longing for you. It reveals heaven's own desire. You see, both stories carry the same flame. Mary stood trembling in a garden, believing love had ended in death. Shah Jahan sat shattered in his palace, believing death had torn him from his soul's companion. Two people, two worlds, 2 centuries apart. And yet their tears tasted the same, and their hearts ached with the same haunting emptiness. Why? Because longing is not a weakness. Longing is the law written into the human heart. Why does it burn so fiercely? Why does it press itself so deeply into your ribs that you can scarcely breathe? Because you were created for union. I shaped humanity not to stand as scattered fragments, but to belong to one another and to me. This is why the ache wounds so deeply when love is torn away. It is not simply pain at absence. It is a wound against design. Consider the body. When one bone breaks, the whole frame aches, not just the fracture. The entire body feels the rupture. So it is with longing. You were crafted as a being of union. One heart meant to rest in another. One soul meant to answer another. One spirit meant to breathe in rhythm with mine. When union is disrupted, the entire being cries out. This is why longing burns. It is the testimony that you were never meant to stand alone. Even your joy teaches you this truth. Think of the moments when you feel most alive, not in isolation, but in embrace. Not in solitude, but in conversation. Not in possession, but in presence. A hand in yours. A gaze that whispers, I see you. I choose you. I know you. Without union, you feel incomplete. You thirst for the missing one, the one you love, the one you lost, the one who feels just beyond reach. You try to quiet the ache with noise, with possessions, with busyness, with distraction. But longing is a stubborn fire. It refuses substitutes. It will not bow to illusion. And here is the deeper mystery. Longing is not only human. Longing is divine. I too long. I long for you. I ache for your embrace. As you ache for mine, when you feel longing, do not call it emptiness. Call it design. It is the echo of Eden, where we once walked together in unbroken union. It is the pull of heaven, where we will walk together again. So do not despise your longing. Do not curse it. Do not hide from it. Longing is proof of love. Longing is proof of life. Longing is the flame that refuses to let you settle for loneliness. It is my signature, written in fire upon your chest, calling you again and again. You were made for communion, human to human, and human to divine. Jesus concludes, now you have seen longing before it was explained. You did not meet it as an idea, but as a presence that walked, waited, broke, and refused to disappear. You saw it in a woman who would not stay still, who walked through darkness because love would not let her sleep. And you saw it in a king who could command the world, yet could not command his own heart to forget. Mary's longing did not ask for certainty. It moved her step by step, until love spoke her name, and the world learned how to breathe again. Shah Jahan's longing did not ask for permission. It carved itself into stone, so that time itself would be forced to remember what love once touched. Different lives, different worlds, the same fire. One stood before an empty tomb. One stood before an empty bed. One heard a voice that restored breath. One spoke a vow that restored meaning. And in both stories, longing refused the same lie. That love is temporary. That love can be erased. That love must end in silence. This is what longing does. It stands at the edge of loss and says, this mattered. It refuses to let what was sacred collapse into nothing. Do you see now why the ache would not leave you? Why it pressed against your chest? Why it leaned forward like a flame searching for air? why it felt like a door that would not close. Your longing is not a flaw. It is not an accident. It is not something to be silenced, medicated, or outgrown. Longing is the witness inside you that love is real. It is the proof that your heart was made for union, not isolation. It is the refusal of your soul to accept emptiness as the final word. This is why longing burns. This is why it stays. This is why it keeps pointing beyond what you can hold. And now, my child, you have seen longing clearly. Not as pain alone, but as purpose. Not as absence, but as direction. So do not despise it. Do not rush to escape it. Do not call it weakness. Because without longing, you would forget what love is. Without longing, you would settle for less than you were made for. Without longing, the human heart would slowly close its doors. And this is what I will show you next. Why longing is not optional. Why it is essential. Why the human heart cannot live without it. And this is where the story continues.